Boston, Crockett's Victory Garden.
Welcome to Crockett's Victory Garden. I'm Jim Crockett. First thing I want to show you today is this beautiful New England aster by the name of Harrington's Pink. There's quite a story behind this. Seems I know more than 45 years ago, there was a farmer in Williamsburg, Iowa, who was very much interested in the wild native asters. This plant, by the way, grows wild from Quebec to South Carolina and west to Colorado. Well, he kept saving all of these, the best colored pinks that he could find. His name was Millard Harrington, and so we end up with what we call Harrington's Pink. Very hardy perennial, blossoms in the fall when few other flowers are doing their best. Now, we said today that we're going to plant some bulbs out of doors. I'm going to divide a peony, and then we're going in the greenhouse. We hope to be able to take some cuttings of that Impatiens. We never got to do it last week. But first of all, I want to talk about a member of the onion family known as a shallot. Now, the shallot is a mild flavored onion with just a touch of garlic to it. Like garlic, you see this bulb, it divides into cloves. Now, each of these little sections will make, by next summer, maybe a dozen, anywhere from 8 to 10 full-size bulbs from just this one little section like this. Now, there's 2 times a year to plant them, either now in the fall or in the spring. Now, if planting them in the fall, you don't need any very special soil, just ordinary garden soil. Plant them roughly 6 inches apart and simply push them in the ground like this so that they are down about 2 inches deep. And you can forget them, just like that. Now, if you are planting these in the spring, which you can do just as well as in the fall, you plant them not quite as deeply, something like that, just about the way you would an onion set. But the idea is I don't want to plant them this way at this time of year because in this part of the country we get frosts, and they could be heaved out of the ground during the winter time. Now, this is the shallot, expensive to buy, very easy to grow. You get a great multiple from a single bulb. Now, we bought these bulbs at a grocery store in the produce department. You can do the same thing. You should plant shallots, plant them in the spring or in the fall. I think the fall planting, especially in warm climate, gives you a bigger harvest. Now let's go over and we'll divide a peony. If you'll recall, about 3 weeks ago, I was in a garden outside Boston, and there I planted a peony and showed you how to plant one that came right straight from the nursery. Now we're going to go back to a little bit more basic thing. We're going to divide a peony, a great old clump. I would estimate that this clump is probably 8 or 10 years old from a nursery. Notice the strong root system to it. These old stems, which haven't quite turned brown yet this fall, but they're getting that way. Let me describe a peony to you and what it is that why peonies are so marvelous plants. They come in snowy white, various shades of blush or deep pink and rose, and dark red. Sometimes the blossoms have as many as 100 petals in them, and they're 6 or 8 inches across, great globes of color. Other times, they have only a half a dozen petals with a center of golden stamens. The peony can grow for 20 years or longer in the same spot, so we're going to give it a very good soil preparation. It's the last chance we're going to get for it. Now, I've had questions from people who say, now I had a peony that did very well for 10 years or more, and then it sort of quit flowering, and the foliage still looks good, but no flowers. Chances are somewhere close by there was a sapling got started, and that tree roots have been invading the area. Maybe the tree itself was shading it. So a peony needs an area right out in the open where it can get full sunshine and no competition. Well, we say we're going to divide these roots. Now, what I use is just an ordinary good stiff-bladed knife. Try to follow the natural divisions of the root. Cut through like this. Cut through rather easily. There we are. There's one of them there now. Now, this is a good standard division, such as you would buy from a nursery. That's not part of it. This is the old root down here, and these young ones. Of course, you notice that in digging, some of these roots were cut off. Don't be concerned about that, because they will send out branch roots and make a nice root system rather soon. The important thing that you want to notice here, and I can perhaps turn it around this way, to point out those buds. Those are the flower buds which we will use as a guide in planting the bush, and they're the ones which will make the stems that bear the flowers next year. Let's go from here. We have a plant. We'll talk about the soil preparation. If I ever dug a $5 hole for a $1 plant, then this is it. You can see how large the hole is in comparison to the plant itself. Tremendously important. I say this is our last chance to do something to the root system of this plant. Now, I don't like to use manure around this kind of a plant, but I do like to use peat moss. And what I'm going to do here is to spread some peat moss, mix some peat moss with the soil that came out of the hole. Good mixture, I would say, roughly 25 to 30% of peat moss. And then I'm going to mix with that this fertilizer, which is bone meal. Now, the reason we use bone meal is because although it has about 1% nitrogen, which is a very small amount, it has about 23% phosphorus. The phosphorus is what makes roots grow, and it's what makes blossoms grow. So we're going to mix this in, and also this is non-burning, and it lasts forever and ever in the soil. Gradually, over a period of a number of years, this will become available to the plants. So we'll mix some with the soil that will be put in around the plant when we put it in the ground. That's that's the only kind of fertilizer that I ever use on peonies. They don't need a lot of nitrogen. Now we'll start to plant this in the ground. And we come to the crucial part of all. Notice I'm putting a stick across here, and I'm going to have this plant so that those buds are no more than 2 inches below the surface of the ground. It is the secret to having peonies grow. So here we just try to fill in around this some. Get a little down on the bottom here. Now we notice that all of this soil being put in around the plant has been enriched so that we'll tend to feed the plant for a number of years to come. Now we'll go on and on. Now here's what we do. Put your stick across so we know where that area is. Eventually we'll fill in that whole plant, give it a drink of water, and that peony will be off and growing and will be good for many years. I hope you know it's not going to stay here in the middle of the Victory Garden. This is a demonstration. It'll go elsewhere for its future life. Well, let's go over here and talk about this bulb border, because I said that we would talk about the perennial border, the bulb border and the annual border here today. And I'm going to begin by talking about what we have here at the moment. This past summer, you've seen in here various types of annuals, marigolds. Now, I particularly like this pale flowered one. It's awfully nice with the blue above it, the lobelia, or even the ageratum up above. I'm not too crazy about the deep orange shades, but they're still nice. I like the paler ones. Now, the petunia that's growing down here is the one called Plum Pudding. It again goes well with the yellow, a nice variety which has stood up well for us. And then we have here a snapdragon. Again, the snapdragon is hardy in some parts of the country, but even so, I prefer to replant them every year. Way down in the front, we have some dahlias grown from seeds, a variety called Redskin. Now we come to, I would say, perhaps an evaluation of what we're up against here today. It's just about time for a frost to arrive. These plants may look okay to you on camera, but they're not very happy. Their life expectancy is anywhere from until tomorrow morning or 2 weeks from now. But the time has come, regardless of how well they're doing or not doing, we've got to get in our bulbs, because this is bulb planting season. And next April, this bed along by the greenhouse will be a solid mass of tulips. Now let's start in by pulling out some of these plants that we have. The first one I'm going to take out is dahlia. I want you to see what we have at the base of this plant. Some of these little tubers. Now you can save tubers just like that over winter and plant them out next year if you don't want to start the plant again from seeds, if you have a particularly nice one. But the chief thing is to get all of these plants out, and I don't want you to think it's sacrilegious to remove flowers that just about serve their time, because in gardening it's a constant battle of planning ahead. Now the kind of fertilizer that we want for bulbs is the same one we like for peonies. That is bone meal. And all we have to do for the bone meal is to spread it on the ground as though there had been a rather good snowfall. In this instance, if you were to spread it out about 6 pounds to 100 square feet, and dig that into the soil. Now this ground is in pretty good shape here. We've had flowers growing here all summer long. The soil has had peat moss, as you know, in previous preparations, so it's in pretty good shape. All right, like that. The final operation before preparatory to planting is simply to establish your grade. Just like that. Now we come to the most crucial part of the whole thing, I think, and that is making a plan of what you're going to grow in the garden. Now, Dutch tulips, Dutch bulbs of all kinds come in various heights and colors. It's simple enough to understand that if we'd like to have tall tulips and low-growing ones, that we'll put the tall ones in the back and the smaller ones in the front. Another thing that you might think about are the colors. You can have colors that blend with one another, or colors that contrast with one another. But whatever you do, have your colors in masses. Very, very important that you just don't put in 2 red ones and then 2 yellow ones and then 2 white ones somewhere else down your garden, because you'll have a very spotty arrangement. Now in a little area in here, just such as this little piece, we have 25 bulbs. I'd rather see you plant a dozen bulbs, but plant them in a group so that you get an effect, rather than plant them at a great distance or spotty through your garden. Well, let's talk about colors that I'm using. I have here a tulip known as Tarda. It's a dwarf tulip, grows 5 inches tall, has yellow and white flowers. The reason I've chosen this one is because this is the biggest traffic area. It's right at the greenhouse door. It's an early one, will come up and people will really enjoy its blossoms. Yellow and white, Tarda. Mixed with it, I have this bulb known as the grape hyacinth. The grape hyacinth will also get about 5 or 6 inches tall with pale blue flowers, the blue and yellow combination. Pale yellow. Now behind it, I have another tulip called Yellow Empress. Now this one will get up about 1.5 feet tall, a darker shade of yellow. So we have blue and yellow, blue and pale yellow backed up by a deeper yellow. I have these groupings set at an angle to one another so that one color overlaps the next. Now that yellow, the deep yellow, goes from that side of the evergreen over to this side and fills into here. Then followed in front of it here, we have a variety called Shakespeare. Now this is a sort of a salmon and apricot. The salmon and apricot will blend beautifully with the yellow. And then following down here, we have beyond the tall yellow one, a tall orange one. And then in front of here, we have one called Joy Bells, which has salmon and orange shades. And so eventually we'll blend colors right on down the garden by making these lines. I've marked these lines just by dropping a little bone meal in them so you can see them against the soil around them. This gives you an idea of how we divide them and how we blend the colors, so from whatever angle this bed is viewed, it's going to be one beautiful sight next spring. I hope you're watching the program at that time. Now we come to the planting of the bulbs. You can use a trowel. Simple enough to use an ordinary trowel such as this, but I'm going to tell you that if you've ever tried planting your tulips with a bulb planter such as this, you'd never go back to anything else again. It has a serrated edge on the top, so it actually will cut through sod if you're setting out anything in the sod. But here, I'm going to plant them just in the ground. And before I plant it, let me talk about the size of the bulb and the depth of planting. We have here a bulb which is roughly 1.5 inches or 2 inches from the tip to the base. This will go in 3 times its height, or the height of the bulb, makes it about 6 inches deep. All we do, you set your bulbs where you want them, like poke your hole in like that, and just push the bulb down with the pointy end up, tip this little machine upside down and give it a tap, and there we are, all filled in. Simplest thing in the world to do. Goes right in the ground, lifts out that cone of soil, drop the bulb in, tap it like this, and you fill the hole in. You can see how easy this is. While I'm right in the midst of talking about these bulbs, I must tell you something else which is very important. If you're going to spend money for bulbs, get the top size bulb of the variety. Now down front here, I have 2 different types. You can see this little bulb. This is a top size bulb of its variety. Here's another bulb of another tulip, and you see the difference in size, yet each is top size. There's no way under the sun for anyone to tell. I couldn't even remember the different kinds myself. You must trust your dealer to give you the best quality and be very, very leery of so-called bargains in bulbs. Well, let's go inside the greenhouse and see what's been happening in there. Another type of bulb that we planted some time ago was the Freesia. Now, about roughly a month ago, we put in some Freesias, which are tender bulbs, come from South Africa, and although you can't probably see them all, there are 6 of them in here just coming out of the ground. Now, the Freesia will have extremely fragrant white, yellow, red, or lavender flowers in sort of bell-shaped racemes. This, I expect, will blossom the latter part of November. If you will plant Freesia bulbs, give them a cool room, about 50 to 60 degrees, maybe have a sunroom like that, bright sunshine. Plant some every 10 days or so, and you'll have blossoms all winter long. Here's another plant that you're going to see more of later. This is the Cineraria. 2 months ago today, I sowed these seeds, which were so small that you probably couldn't even see them when they dropped on the pot. Now you see them growing up We have those in 6-packs, so that we're ready to move them into individual containers like this. Now, cinerarias look like daisies. The original plants came from the Canary Islands. The blossoms are white or shades of pink or dark red or lavender or the deepest purple that you can imagine. They seem to be cut out of velvet. A handsome plant called a cineraria. About 3 or 4 weeks ago, we talked about oriental poppies. We have here, we brought in some oriental poppies, just bare roots without any growth on them at all. And I made the point that oriental poppies will die if they're moved when they have leaves on them, providing that they're not in a pot, so the soil and the roots won't be disturbed. We brought some in that were dormant, that is in midsummer, cut up the roots in little pieces and set them in this pot. And you see we have here a handsome oriental plant, a poppy plant, ready to go into the garden. We could keep it in a cold frame over winter, plant it out in the spring. Now we come to, this asparagus fern. Now remember what the asparagus fern looks like. That's this plant right up here beside me. This is the asparagus fern called Sprengeri. Notice that these berries on it are now green. They'll turn bright red and eventually turn black. Well, it was some of those little black seeds which we planted in this flower pot just 2 months ago. And here come the little seedlings. And I want you just to tap some of those out and see what we have here. There we have it. You see what these little things, already they're making that tuberous root for which the plant is so famous. Now we're going to drop these into little individual compartments in here and let them grow on for another month or two, and then they'll be ready to go into larger pots and grow right on again and again from there. This is called the Sprengeri fern, Asparagus Sprengeri. It's interesting that all asparagus plants are either male or female, and it's only the female plant that bears the berries. So if you have an asparagus that doesn't bear berries, don't think that you're doing something wrong. You may have a boy instead of a girl. Now we're going to talk about bulbs again. A handsome bulb called Soleil d'Or. This is a type of narcissus. This one is a tender bulb. I want you to see these and see how big and tough they are, how firm they are. Just like rocks, they are so full of vitality, and the flowers are already formed within here. So all we have to do is to encourage this thing to grow by giving it some physical support. And all I'm going to do is use pebbles, just pebbles like that, to form a little base for these plants. Go right here into the pot. Now they don't want to be too deep in. I like to see the bulbs in the ground. You'd plant them so there was 2 or 3 inches of soil over the top of them. But here in the flower pot, part of the beauty is to see the bulbs. Again, we'll fill in around them with a little bit of these pebbles. I'll add water. Put these in a dark place for about a couple of months until the new growth is about 2 inches long. Then we bring it into the sunshine in a cool room, and you'll get the most beautiful yellow flowers, so fragrant, you really love. This is the Soleil d'Or, a type of narcissus. Now, if you live in the southern part of the country, the Soleil d'Or is perfectly hardy outdoors and will grow in your garden. You can save the bulbs and plant them outside, but in most of the country, they're not hardy. Now, we said we're going to talk about taking cuttings of the Impatiens. And here we are. We just brought in a plant to show you what they look like so that you can kind of refresh your memory a little bit. A very handsome plant which will blossom year-round. But I don't want to take in an old plant which has been grown all summer long in the garden. It's a little bit rough looking. All we do is to take a cutting off one of those stems. Now here's a cutting roughly 2 inches long or so. I'm going to remove the larger leaves and the bottom leaves so that we have a cutting which looks like this. Cutting like that. And I'm also going to remove the flowers because I'm not interested in flowers at this stage in the game at all. So we have now just one little cutting on a stem. Now, this will root very, very easily, but I will go through that routine of dipping it in water to moisten the bottom of it. We'll dip it here in some rooting powder, and we'll put it in sand. We just make a little hole here in sand and pop it in like that. And within a short time, that will be rooted. Now, you've seen me use this type of thing and make a cutting such as this, and then put it in a plastic bag. A plastic bag, I will admit, has a tendency to flop over. So what I'm going to use here is just a little plastic glass. Use a mason jar or something like that to make its own little greenhouse. Now, this wants to be in an area where there's bright light but no sun, and it will take root in about a week. Then we plant it in ordinary soil, and off it'll grow. Well, let's get to some questions today. The first one is really not a question. A gentleman in New York City wrote to me, and he says, "Alas, the sage from the Athens of America is revealed to have feet of clay. Sphagnum, indeed. We have heard something akin to sacrilege uttered from within sight of the hallowed halls of Harvard. On the other hand, in view of superlative quality of your show, I herewith issue a blanket pardon for all past and future lapses of grammatical nature." You know, we learn something every day. I know it's not sphagnum, it's sphagnum. But if I would say that to my garden center dealer, he wouldn't even know what I was talking about. Eggplants. We had one good eggplant, and then the leaves on all of the plants started to turn yellow and curl up. What happened? Well, what happened was that the verticillium wilt, for which these plants are not resistant, finally got to it. I should say the thing you should do is to plant your eggplants in a portion of your garden where you have not had a vegetable garden before, especially a section where you haven't had potatoes, tomatoes, eggplants, okra, peppers. That's why I say plant them somewhere else in your garden. Well, they say that's all the time we have for this week. Next week, we're going to plant some French Roman hyacinths. We're going to plant out in the perennial garden some giant flowering onions. We'll have blossoms 5 or 6 inches across next spring. We're going to plant some lily of the valley. And then we're going to divide that marvelous herb called French tarragon. I'm Jim Crockett in Crockett's Victory Garden, and I hope you enjoy the program every week.